Welcome to the Life Endurance Podcast. Today I'm excited to bring to you a conversation with Rick and Monique Elgersma. They are therapists in the Des Moines area. Their primary focus is on relationship and family therapy. After meeting them, I knew they would be an awesome addition to the podcast. If you are in a relationship, it is obviously a very significant part of your life that can bring its own challenges, but also be a power for good. So I was excited to get some perspective on relationships in today's age, different tactics on how to improve them, maintain them, just hopefully bring some information to anybody listening, as well as just dive into therapy in general and how it can help you and how therapists go about their work and the solutions they can provide. I would definitely suggest having a pen and paper, something to take notes ready at hand for this episode. Rick and Monique definitely drop some good little knowledge bombs, some actionable items, so I suggest being ready to take note of those when you hear them. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did, and with that, we'll get right into it. Joining me today is Rick and Monique Elgersma. They own and operate Real Connections Counseling in Urbandale, Iowa. Their primary focus is in couples and family counseling, but with a powerful difference from most by using a co-therapy strategy, which is something I'm sure we'll dive into later on. Appreciate your guys' time. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, we're doing good. We had a good holiday, so it's a nice chance to get back into things.
I'm actually ready to get back to work. The holidays are fun and they're good, and you eat all kinds of crap. But
yeah, definitely get a lot.
And it's healthy for you during the holidays, and that's it. But I'm ready to get back to work.
Awesome. Yeah, for everybody listening, it's the week after New Year's, so definitely fresh year, getting back into it. Definitely excited for this one. I feel like it's almost like a step up for my podcast, just getting that goal of getting information from real experts out there. So the two things I wanted to hit on are definitely relationships on a partner romantic sense in today's age, but also just therapy in general and how it can benefit people. So quickly, I guess a little background on you guys, how you guys got into this and came into this co-therapy strategy as well.
Well, Rick and I have been married for 27 years, a long time, and we've had our own share with therapy and counseling and making our marriage to be a much more solid, better marriage. But I have a background in counseling. That's where I started with my undergrad way back in the day. But I got burnt out really fast. I wasn't well trained in that, I don't think, at the time, and wasn't ready. But when we decided we wanted to go in this, we had people coming to us, talking to us anyway. We had a friend actually approach us and ask us to mentor him as he started a new relationship. And then as they went along, he's like, I think I found the girl I want to marry. I want you to mentor us as we go through it. And so we mentored them through their first year of marriage, actually, so quite a long time. Wow. And that was a super cool opportunity. And we said, maybe we should be doing this professionally because people talk to us about their issues anyway.
Our distinct togetherness, though, it came in a weird spot in our life, and that was during RAGBRAI.
Training for
RAGBRAI in 2007. I have a birth defect called spina bifida, and in the very early days of my life, like the first few days, it was unknown whether I would live. Doctors said I wouldn't walk. Those kinds of things were all part of the conversation, and you can imagine what kind of things were going through my parents' heads, like what are we going to have to live with and things like this. But my parents pushed me to think about what was possible for me. And when I started doing that, I recognized that though I might be limited to what normal legs could do, my legs definitely don't do the same things that normal legs can do, but they can do an awful lot. And so one year I said, you know what? I had spinal cord surgery and using a walker, and couldn't hardly walk. And I told Monique, we are doing RAGBRAI next year. And I just sort of said it matter-of-factly, and she said I was crazy. And
said, let's maybe get you walking without a walker before we talk about riding a bike across the state of Iowa.
Let's get rid of the walker first, maybe. Well, then we were invited to go into RAGBRAI and to ride with a team, and it was at that time that we made the decision. So in my mind, I'm already sort of self-limiting. Can I do this? Can I do this? And Monique hadn't ever done that kind of thing before, and so she's saying, "Can I do this? Can I do this?" And while we're practicing and riding, we're both kind of frustrated by our limitations and by how weak we feel and by whether or not we can make long distances. And over time, we started to encourage each other and say, okay, together or not at all. We got this, together or not at all. And that sort of became our phrase, together or not at all. And from that conversation, our little together or not at all, came the, what if we helped other couples say the same thing? And if we could act as a team out on the road, we can act as a team in the counseling room and help others act as a team themselves. And so we begin with a relationship and inspire relationships. Instead of begin with counseling to hopefully improve your relationship, we begin with our relationship inspired by the intent to relate and then help others do that as a team. For themselves. So
I always love those kind of stories, especially as a endurance athlete.
Yep.
All about pushing those physical limitations, and there's a lot of people with just horrible physical conditions that still go on to do RAGBRAI, Ironman, marathons.
We cried on our first 3-mile ride, and then on RAGBRAI. She rode nearly 108 miles in a day.
Yeah, that's no joke. I only did 200+ mile rides, and one of those was my Ironman.
Yep.
So yeah, I can appreciate the level that takes.
Well, and I think part of that too, we say together or not at all, but it would be when Rick felt weak, I would encourage him that way. And when I felt weak, he would encourage me that way. Hey, I'm just going to walk my bike. He's, nope, we'll ride it together. We'll do this together. No, I'll wait with you if you need a break. That's what we want to teach our couples. That's what we want to teach our families, is that you work together as a team as well. You help encourage the other person. You find the places where they're weak and you become a strength for them or an encourager for them. Because everybody has assets and liabilities. Every personality has assets and liabilities. Every relationship has assets and liabilities. And when we stop looking at their weaknesses, their liabilities in the relationship, and start looking at what they're bringing to the relationship that help me or help the other person, then you change your focus from, rather than focusing on the negative, you focus on the positive. I mean, we hear so often you need to work on your weaknesses. Well, yes, there are some things we have to change. Yes, absolutely. We need to work on our weaknesses. But in relationship, if we spend all of our time pointing out the weaknesses, your relationship's not going to grow. What we need to do is look at that weakness and say, you know what, I've got the opposite of that weakness. I can complement that weakness with my asset, and we can be better together. And that's part of what we do in the counseling room. Isn't that we don't tell them to work on their weaknesses. Yeah, let's improve some of this stuff. But some of the other stuff, we need to say, this is a function of their personality, and they're not going to be able to change it. So you can choose to focus on that, or you can take what you have as a strength and bring that together and build your relationship to a healthier place.
Yeah, I like that. And honestly, that applies to all sorts of life. When I consider business and you're trying to get employee engagement up, or if you're trying to even train a dog, the best way is to really double down, reinforce the good behaviors. And just think about it, it's a good, people like the positive response, they're going to want to push towards that. So yeah, any way to avoid change being based around fear, I think is definitely a good angle to take it. And people probably forget how that could apply to the relationship side as well.
There are worse things to be compared to than a dog.
No, we like dogs. We actually have a therapy dog,
we
too.
Love dogs.
So, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. In the end, it is about inspiring the functions of who we are in the healthiest way possible. That comes from a very individual, like you as an extreme athlete. You got to know what's inside of you that knows you can do something crazy hard. Like I'm looking at Ironmans and thinking there's no way until you begin to practice.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you recognize there was a way. And that's the question we ask. We take trying out of the vocabulary. I tried and it didn't work is the thing you hear an awful lot of. Well, what if we don't say I tried and it didn't work? What if we said I'm willing to practice? Anyone who's ever been great at anything, from business to sports to music to whatever, anyone who's ever been great at anything has practiced their way there. And so when we start thinking in terms of personality differences and the assets and things like this, we start asking, okay, what are you able to practice right now? What do you have the bandwidth for right now? We won't worry about the stuff you don't have bandwidth for. We are going to think in terms of the stuff that you do have right now, the assets you have right now, and begin to practice those things. You're never going to make it to the NBA if you don't learn how to dribble a basketball. You're never going to become a CEO or a business owner if you don't know how to count to 2, right? Those are the things that are pieces of the relationship pie, is we need to learn how to say hi in some cases. In the morning. We need to learn how to say, how's it going sometimes. Very simple statements.
Where my brain kind of goes with that. And I remember writing down your guys' phrase, trying is not practice. So I guess we're already touching on that. But kind of the use it or lose it can apply to a relationship as well. I mean, you start out early in the relationship, the nice good mornings and the, little stuff like that. But then it can, if you don't consciously work on keeping up those little things, it can fade away and have a big impact on a relationship.
Yep.
I saw, I think it was a reel or a meme or something not that long ago where somebody wrote down, my husband just came in and he came over to the dog. Oh, what a good dog, and petted the dog and gave the dog kisses and all that. And then he turned around and left. And I was sitting right by him. Like, how often does that happen in our relationships, that we give the attention and forget to give the attention to our partner, or forget to give the attention to those that are important to us, or they get our leftovers, right? And so that's why when we're working with like Rick said, the small things, the little things, we're not saying you have to completely change and become this perfect partner. What's one thing you can work on today? What's one thing you can practice? Because it's the little things. It's not the, if you can't buy flowers for your partner every week, don't start with buying flowers. That's not something you can be consistent on. What's something you can be consistent on? Texting her I love you every day, texting him I love you every day, or I thought of you over lunch, or whatever. What's something you can do almost every day or consistently that lets the person know that you care? That's much more important than planning a big weekend away, because that's a one-time thing.
That's a mountaintop.
That's a mountaintop experience. We want, how do we get from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain? It's those little things. It's the steps, each step you take to get there. It's the training for an Ironman. You don't just all of a sudden wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to do an Ironman today. We couldn't wake up one morning and decide to do RAGBRAI. Like you said, our first ride was 3.4 miles, and I nearly died. At least that's what it felt like, And then I could
Glad you're still with us.
Still with us, yeah. And so it's the same thing with relationships.
Yeah, that's there's been maybe a severe lack of a romantic life the last few years. Coming out of school, COVID definitely does not help the dating scene make that any more simple than it certainly isn't already. But I think that's something I have had one long-term relationship, and I always just find myself looking at relationships that my friends have, or even just coworkers, really kind of just thinking about the dynamics between them and their partner. And I think that those small things are really just that really underrated element that, personally I just hear a lot of people that, they're complaining about their girlfriend, boyfriend, but then, they're just like, I got surprised by flowers, and that just seems to make the difference. But, in the long-term scheme, that's, anybody can go just buy flowers or, do those kind of little gestures, but it really takes a lot of thought and discipline to always put your plates away in just that little way that they like it, or maybe they really don't like taking out the trash, or just go doing that little thing for them, or the good morning text, stuff like that. I think those really are the things that make a difference in those. When I see a good relationship and I see one that you're just like, kind of like, why are they together? And that those little things are definitely a common point of they're either there or they're not, and that definitely makes a difference, I think.
Whoever came up with whoever was the first person to make a meme was really on to something. Well, my wife is the meme expert. However, what I love about them is they are tiny little messages. And those tiny little messages are the things that can make, if we would concentrate on the memes out there, the world would be a better place, because they have these tiny little messages. Some of them are funny, some of them are serious, and some of them are sad or whatever. But they all have a purpose. Many of them do anyway, and they all kind of have a message behind it. And if we would only listen to that tiny little message, we would start practicing. And that's our whole hope. We work in terms of memes because we work in those tiny little spots, not on the bait, less on the huge spots and more on those tiny little spaces.
Kind of leaning into, I know you said we'll talk about a little bit more about therapy, but one of the things that about therapy that a myth that I want to bring up right now is that people feel like if I go to therapy, that'll fix it. Right. Our jobs are not to fix people. Our jobs are to help them to recognize things in their lives that they can change, to help them to come to terms with things that are hard, or to provide skills or resources for them so that they can work through a tough situation, or to learn how to communicate better, or to, start dating again when it comes to relationships. But in general, counseling's not a fix-all. That's why those little things are the important pieces. That's why we start there, because what we do in an hour and a half in counseling, because we're non-standard, we do 80-minute sessions. We do the co-therapy, so you have both Rick and I in the room, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. In an 80-minute session, we can get through a lot. We can get through a really tough situation and come to the other side, come up with some skills and some resolution and that kind of stuff, which is awesome. And that can help the couple bridge a gap. Right, that's like we put a big bridge on over a river, but we're not doing the rest of the path. They've still got to walk. We're not going home with them. We're not going to their house. We're not going to be in their day to day, and that's where those little practices come in. That's why the trying is not practice. That's why when we give you skills, we say take this home and try it at home. Practice it, and if you struggle with it, we can talk about it in your next session. But if you're not doing the little things when you're outside of our office, what we do in our office is only going to do so much.
Yeah, if you
We're only going to get so far.
If you go to a physical therapist and after an injury or surgery, they can teach you what to do. Unless you go do those exercises at home, the injury's not going to get better. Or if you have an infection and doctor gives you antibiotics, if you don't take them, it doesn't do any good for you.
They can give you a shot in the office, but if you don't take the pills when you get home, it's going to come back, or it's going to be worse.
Yeah. So I guess let's dive into now that we're getting onto the therapy subject, what it means, what co-therapy means. Maybe I know it's we've talked, and it's not a very uncommon thing. So it seems kind of obvious how you guys stumbled upon it. Just the power of you guys together and being able to help other couples. So it certainly makes sense in a couple's perspective. But yeah, if you guys could go into how you got into that, where you've seen the benefits of that, and let you go from there.
You want to start? Have at it.
Okay. Actually, if you would have told me 15 years ago I was working with Rick every day, I probably would have laughed in your face. But it's been really...
I'd be crying in a corner.
No, but we've really learned a lot by doing this together. But the power of co-therapy is just amazing. When we decided to pursue this, we knew we wanted to do the co-therapy. That was always the intention. So we went to school, we took the same classes, we were in the same classes. We did everything together but our internship, because we couldn't do those together, which is fine. We needed to learn our skills. But with the intention of that, when we got done with our schooling, we would work together. There's some really great benefits with it that you don't get in general counseling. And that is, you've got two people in the room. So you've got two different perspectives. You've got two different people hearing the same message or seeing the same situation. And he picks up things I don't. And I pick up things he doesn't. If I'm talking or doing some skills training or whatever, and I'm up on the board, he's watching the clients and he's watching their nonverbals and catching things maybe I won't. When you're talking, they're looking at you. When he's talking, they're looking at him. So I can look at both and I can go back and forth and I can catch little nuances that maybe, oh, they didn't really like that being said, or they got really hurt by that. We can kind of see their nonverbals and we can bring that into the room. And as an individual therapist, I can only look at one person at a time. So I'm not going to catch everything. So it's a great way to bring things into the room sooner. It's a good way to catch things that maybe they're not even recognizing that they're showing us in the room. Or here's another benefit: if I'm sharing something and they're kind of looking at us like deer in the headlights, look like, what is she saying? I don't get it. Rick can be like,
that happens to me more. It happens to her, but
But then Rick can turn around and say it a different way, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes on.
Yep.
Co-therapy. We knew a long time ago that there was something special, much more integrative, much more involved about being in relationship with other people. Somehow it didn't just become a transactional conversation. It became something that was bigger, exponentially bigger than the conversation itself, in learning how to relate to each other. And so that was the whole idea, is that if we begin with a relationship right off the bat, the whole experience will change. It'll change from this, okay, I'm definitely the client, this is definitely the expert experience, to definitely we are the experts in our field, but we create a relational space right out of the get-go, right out of the gate, right from the get-go is what I should say. And that beginning relationship experience from the first session on creates a bigger conversation than what you normally have from a counselor-client relationship. And I know that because I have my own clients as well. And it's definitely different. It's still good. It's still worth noting that if you find counseling out there, that is a good thing. But what is so amazing about co-therapy is it begins with relationship and it creates a bigger conversation right out of the gate because of the relationship experience. The two that we have with us, Cora and Jess, they're not married.
They're not married to each other.
They're not married to each other. They're both married, but they are friends. And they are connecting in the room, just like Monique and I are connecting in the room. They're working out this pattern together, this rhythm together, just like Monique and I are working out this rhythm together in the counseling room. They are sharing space in the same way that Monique and I are sharing space in the counseling room. And the client is experiencing that sharing. The client experiences that connection, that rhythm. And from that model then becomes something that they take on for themselves. And it actually becomes part of the fruit of the conversation, is building this relational rhythm between the two counselors, helps build relational rhythm with the couple and even the individual. And that has turned into exactly why we do it. Because sure, you're getting double or more the expertise, which means that you're getting a much wider width and breadth of experience in the counseling room, but you're getting something with co-therapy that you can't get with a single counselor. And that is the rhythm of a relationship from the first word on. And, that's why we think it's so special.
Yeah, and even just like how a relationship, how you're alluding to, is a team effort, and how strong that can be. Same thing in like this, or if business, you always have multiple. The best businesses have multiple people inputting on how to solve problems.
Have good support systems.
So it's definitely you kind of get double the support, and it's definitely that having one person be able to back up and kind of look at it from a distance, it is amazing how many little things you can see. And I'm sure that just, accelerates the rate of kind of breakthroughs.
It's the difference between standing on solid ground and standing on a cloud, right? That support, when we model that support for each other right away, we're establishing what it means to add support systems into your natural relational space, and that becomes, the floor underneath your feet. It's not something that you're going to fall through. And that's an exciting piece of, co-therapy.
And learning how to not talk over each other, go where, someone takes the lead and you kind of go in that direction. And if you have a different idea, maybe you bring it up in the next session, or maybe you bring it up a little bit later. Or, there are times that Rick and I both have a thought, and one of us will speak, and then we'll say, you were going to say something. Or we'll catch the clients doing that, and we'll say, you were going to say something, but your spouse or your partner just spoke up. What were you trying to say? They might not get that opportunity at home. So we're modeling that for them. Plus, then we're encouraging them to do that in session. So that's part of that relationship thing. Whereas if I were just an individual counselor, they wouldn't see that demonstrated. When I'm like, we were going to say something. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Especially on the couple's end.
Yes. Imagine an interruptive couple, an interruptive person in a couple, how much relational havoc that can create if somebody's always interrupting the other. Well, if we're modeling that right away, just imagine how much they can learn just from that sharing experience alone.
Absolutely. So on that relationship side of things, what are kind of, I like to think if people want to change, being aware is always the kind of starting point for anything. So what are some of the top sources, kind of categories of problems that, you see most common in a relationship that's struggling?
Our top four things.
Top four.
Top four things that we see are problems with communication.
Of course.
Conflict resolution. Boundaries. And connection, feeling connected with their spouse or partner. Those would be the top four skills that we're helping clients to develop, because those will feed into wanting divorce. They'll feed into infidelity. They'll feed into financial problems. They'll feed into parenting problems. Because if you're missing some of those basic skills in your relationship as a couple, they're going to feed into and fall into some of those other negative things. So yes, we deal with those other things as well. Co-parenting, people that are on the verge of divorce, infidelity, porn addiction, things like that do definitely wreak havoc on a relationship. But boundaries on time, like if you spend too much time at the office and I've got all this free time over here, what do I do with all that free time? Now I find a friend on the side, or how do we put boundaries around work versus home? How do we make sure that your spouse feels like your priority? How do they know that they're your priority when all they get is your leftover? So we're working on connection, communication, conflict resolution, and healthy boundaries.
That breeds also, if those things are unhealthy, it sort of breeds the killers to a relationship in a way. The Gottmans, who are relationship specialists, they're the researchers, relationship or therapeutic researchers in our field, said that the four basic killers to a relationship are contempt, stonewalling, defensiveness, and criticism. If those things are present, especially contempt, if those things are consistently present, a relationship is slowly just downgraded and defeated. And so we are working through these issues, and underneath it we see these four major components, and there are others, shame, guilt, those are other things too that are part of the equation, but those four things are the stakeholders. They're the posts of good relationships, when we can learn how to do something other than be critical of the other, when we can do something other than feel contempt for the other. Those are the things that we get to practice.
Awesome. Yeah, so those top kind of four things, if what so obviously when they come into you, what are some of your ways of flushing out that awareness, getting them to kind of have some of those aha moments, maybe give people a little freebie, so to say, if they're listening and they're maybe struggling in a relationship, what's something they can start to think about or do to be more aware of those problems that, might just seem normal, but then they're not realizing are the source of an issue.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, if you're not talking or you're not, everything you talk about turns into a fight. There's communication issues and conflict resolution issues there. But I would say 100% of our couples, when they first come to us, have problems with boundaries.
Okay.
And that's probably because we all have boundaries, but we are not good about communicating them. So whether it's the boundary or the communication problem there, I don't know. But we all have an idea of what it means to be cheated on. We all have an idea of how much money is too much to spend. We all have an idea on, so we have these, how much time is too much to spend with their partner's family or with friends or at work. We all have these in our head, but if we don't talk about them with our partner, then they might not think it's a problem. What do you mean I can't hang out? I've always hung out with the guys every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. That's just what I do. And when we got together, that's what you knew, right? Like, well, now we're married and we have 2 kids, and I'd actually like you to be home more than 4 nights a week, But if you don't talk about that, then all of a sudden it becomes resentments build, and you don't talk about it, and people get upset and they turn into fights. So boundaries would be, talking about how much time do we spend together? How much time do we spend apart? How much, things like that. So having those discussions, there's a freebie right there. Like if you've got something in your head that you have as a boundary or a value, start talking about that with your significant other, because they might not have that same boundary as you, or theirs might be further back on the line or further out than yours. And so, how do you decide that 3 days vacation with family is too much? Or how do you decide that a week's vacation is too much? If you don't talk about it, then how do you decide? Then somebody gets upset, right? Don't cross that boundary if you don't know it's there. But if you know it's there, then it's a discussion.
There are many different ways to show unfaithfulness or faithfulness. We sort of pin unfaithfulness on having sex with other people other than our own spouses or our own partners, right? That's where we sort of lay into the unfaithfulness bracket. But spending $150 on something is a small way of being unfaithful if you can only afford $50. Those kinds of smaller ways are still versions of lack of faithfulness. Going out too often, staying out too long, little versions of unfaithfulness. Not defending your spouse when a family member is criticizing them for something, not standing up for them in the moment. Small way to show unfaithfulness to your spouse or partner. So this is all about boundaries. This is all about knowing how to communicate. This is all about learning how to create intimacy with your partner. And when we start thinking of faithfulness in a bigger way, that's the idea that we bring into the counseling room most often, and that is kind of the vein in which we help our couples.
Like how do you know your spouse or your partner has your back?
Yeah.
That's the summary of it. Like, how do you know that they've got your back?
Yeah, that's interesting. I never quite thought of it that deep of, kind of that thinking of all those little things, as a being unfaithful or, how that can.
And they don't come across that way, right? I mean, like
That's
you
the
don't,
tricky
I wouldn't
part.
say that if I worked late that all of a sudden I'm being unfaithful to Rick. It's the not prioritizing your spouse. Not thinking of how that's impacting them, right? So, clarifying that a little bit. It's not like if you work too long or you go out with your friends that all of a sudden you're being unfaithful. We're not saying that. It's that consistency where your spouse gets your last thought, not your first thought. We have a scheduled date night. It's one night a week. It's Thursday nights. And so we don't do anything on Thursday nights without clarifying it with the other person first. So if someone says, hey, you want to, grab dinner on Thursday night, I'll say, well, I'll have to check with Rick first. It's date night. And if one of his friends are like, hey, you want to go out for beers? I have to check with Monique. It's date night. Now, that doesn't mean that it's like in stone, we have to do it on Thursday night. Because sometimes there's activities happening on the weekend and we decide to make that our date. So then it might be, sure, go out with your friend and grab beers on Thursday because on Sunday we're going to, music at the winery or something like that because we've already got that planned. But having that set time that's ours, we know that we get the priority before anybody else. And that's part of that. How does our daughter know that we pick each other first? She knows that we are each other's priority, and she's second, and then everybody else is after that.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's say somebody they come to realize, oh, this is something that's causing a problem with the relationship. I guess, obviously, going to therapy, that's a good way to initiate tackling that problem. So what do you guys do? So you find an issue, it's identified. What's kind of the next step for starting to treat that, or kind of mentality? Maybe if they're not in therapy, how do you tactfully broach the subject? Any kind of tips or how you guys like to go about that?
Well, I will say that probably a good portion of our couples, especially older couples, it takes them about 2 years before they finally get into therapy. Like one of the person in the couple has been asking to go to therapy for about 2 years on average before they come in, which means some are longer and some are less. I think that, we like to say, how did you used to say it? Fix-ups. We do tune-ups, fix-ups.
Startups, tune-ups, fix-ups, and all-out repair.
So what we mean by that is we do premarital counseling, and we will talk about boundaries, communication, conflict resolution, personalities. We'll talk about that in our premarital stuff because we want to build that foundation, a solid foundation for the couples that are getting married. So we'll do those startups, right? We'll do fix-ups, like someone has just one issue that they want to work on. We'll work on that. We've got people that have been married for many, many years, and they're like living two completely separate lives, and we're going to do something different with that. But so there's never a wrong time to come to therapy. So there's also, so if you feel like you just want to improve your relationship, look into a coach or look into a therapist, right? There's nothing wrong with finding someone that's in a better place than you that can either mentor you or provide you the skills to be better. So I often will say when we were in our counseling program, one of the things they talked about was look at a couple that you admire. What characteristics do they have that you want? And then be willing to ask them, can I pick your brain? Why, I noticed that you always open the door for your wife. Why do you do that? Why did you start doing that? She seems to like that. She's fully capable of opening her door. Why are you opening her door? Have them sit down with that couple and talk about what are the things that they're seeing in that couple that they like, that they want to emulate, and figure out why. Because most people are actually willing to tell you about some of that hard stuff that they went through so that they can to get where they are today. Yeah. And Rick and I are different in that way than some counselors. We're not afraid to talk about our relationship and the struggles we've had and how we've overcome it. We bring that into the room. Like Rick said, we are a relationship helping this next relationship. And if we can't be real about our struggles, then we're just the expert. We're not in relationship.
Yeah, that falls along one of my personal core values is learn from failure, mimic success. I definitely try to do that with relationships, especially that, look if I see a couple that, wow, they seem like they're doing great. Why is that? And then, plenty of examples out there of like, okay, I don't want that. So being very conscious of avoiding that, thinking forward. When I have a relationship, my friends always make fun of me for how picky I tend to be when attempting to date. And I still try to stay true because I know just how big of an impact it can have on you.
Absolutely.
I think the thing I want to say about that is different than her. It doesn't go against her, but it's different. There are many people that don't come in even for a long, long time. And then there are people that come in right away. But, there are really two basic things to say about how to know that coming into therapy is a good idea. And that is to put it in any other space in your life where you would logically do something to change it. Like, if you stink a little bit, what are you going to do? You're going to put on deodorant. Well, that's maintenance mode. You're not going to, most of us wouldn't go out knowing that we smell a certain way. We just wouldn't do it. We'd wash our armpits and then we'd, put on deodorant. That's a little maintenance mode that helps us change our confidence going forward. But if we've broken our leg, are we going to say, well, shoot, I guess I'm just never going to walk again? No, we're going to go to a doctor. We're going to figure that out. We're going to get a cast on. We're going to go to physical therapy. We're going to do the things that we need to do. I sound like a New Yorker right now. We're going to do the things that we need to do to make that a better situation. That's our all-out repair. So some relationships are moving towards broken, but they don't think naturally, we need to go find something to help us out.
We can do it on our own. We'll just read some self-help books.
We can do it on our own, as if you could go out and just will your armpits not to stink. Right? You have to do something. And the best part about coming in and finding Rick and Monique or Cora and Jess or any, variation of us, because we mix the teams up here and there a little bit too, is knowing that you're going to have relationship specialists who come in as a relationship to help relationships. I mean, that is the trifecta of relationship. That's much more than just changing out a tire. I mean, that is an all-out repair shop right there. We can change a bolt, and we can, rebuild the car. Those are the things that make Real Connections counseling special. But that's that's true about any other counseling situation. It's just so important that once you know something even little isn't right, in every other area of our life, we'll do something to change that. We want you to think naturally about that in the mental health and relational health space as well.
Yeah, I think even thinking of this outside of just couples and just therapy in general, trying to get across that message of how it can help and when's a good time to start considering it. I'll admit I'm definitely that type that's very reluctant to go get help. There's probably been a few times in my life that I should have been going to therapy, especially throughout college. But
that's all of us.
Yeah. But
I think it's kind of like like what Rick was saying. It's I hurt my ankle in 2009, right after Ragbray, actually. And we were going to ride, maybe it was 2010, we were going to ride just a portion of Ragbray with some friends, and I couldn't because I really wrenched my ankle. I should have gone to physical therapy, and I didn't. And I still, it acts up still some today. And that's one of those situations where it's like, well, I should have probably gone to counseling, but I didn't. I could go to physical therapy now if I wanted to for my ankle. I mean, I still could, right? I can do it later, and it could still help. But the reality is, when you're sick, you go to the doctor. When you break something or you tear something on your body, you go to a physical therapist. You go to the dentist to maintain your teeth. Sometimes therapy is to fix something. Sometimes therapy is to repair it. Sometimes therapy is just maintenance. I want to be a better person, so I'm gonna work through my issues so that I don't pass them on to my kids, or I can have a healthy relationship with someone else. I want to make sure that I'm in the best place that I can be mentally. And mental health is one of those things where a lot of people feel like they can't talk to people. They don't want to go and complain. And a therapist's role is to be a safe place for you to talk about the stuff that's hard. If your friends are tired of hearing the same story over and over, maybe you need to go to a therapist. That's a good example. Like, I've told the same story over and over and over, and my friends are tired of hearing it. My spouse is tired of hearing it. Well, then maybe you should go to therapy, because then there's a reason why you keep telling that story. Maybe there's something you need to work through with that story. Maybe there's something in that story that you're not sharing or you don't feel comfortable sharing that you need to. And maybe you can in a safe space with a therapist, someone that's not going to judge you, someone that's going to help you work through it. When we keep repeating the same bad behaviors, it's usually because we're stuck or because somebody's not listening and you need someone to listen. That's what therapy's about.
And it comes back always to that mental side of things, just like the RAGBRAI. Physically, all indicators seemed like, nope, there's no way I'm ever going to do RAGBRAI, but mentally is really where it counts. Same thing with just everything. That's something I haven't dived into much yet on my podcast, but I've always had the intent of trying to promote mental health and just why it is so important to be aware of. And it's something I'm always learning more about, and I'm sure I could benefit from learning more about therapy or going to it myself. But definitely always trying to promote that, because it all comes down to just sometimes you notice you're stuck in a loop. It keeps happening over and over, and just getting that outside little input, being able to put yourself out there can really make the difference.
And I will say, I mean, I'm not knocking self-help books. Some people can read a self-help book, can read a book on relationships or mental health or whatever, and actually make the changes. But a lot of us can't. And part of counseling is also accountability, right? So when we do our couples stuff, we give them homework. And then we ask them about it the next time they come in. How did the practice go? How did this work? Or if it was something they had to fill out, we might use it to help broaden their awareness of themselves or their spouse or a relationship. And those pieces are also part. Some of that you can't do by reading a book. Sometimes you have to experience it. And so sometimes just coming in and actually verbalizing your struggle, verbalizing what you have, you realize you're not alone. Other people struggle with this, or they found a way to deal with that. So.
Well, I do little Facebook reels and, YouTube shorts and that kind of thing. And we give our best stuff away. Like, we tell you exactly what we tell other people in the counseling room. The thing is, they hear it. Some of them can implement a little bit of it. But when we've given our best stuff away, people still want to come in and get support for how to do it. Get some accountability system going for how to do that. So they take this relationship between Monique and I, or Cora and Jess, they take that relationship and allow it to become a support system for the work that they have to do in learning how to support each other. So all of a sudden we become this naturally growing support structure that is unique to co-therapy. But in many ways, it's just about being able to talk to each other and me to be able to tell you, this is a good technique and a good idea. And you can go out and implement that, but you come in for support.
Yeah, so I wonder if there's, maybe people kind of like me that are very just system oriented, and they, if they don't know much about therapy, they think, it's just, you're just kind of chatting. What are some things you can say about being, experts in the field, trained therapists, that can maybe help somebody with that mindset? How you guys have processes, tools you use for these breakthroughs. It's not just, just having a chat.
Yeah.
There is either a science or, proven system that therapists use. Just talk on that, and how, maybe get somebody's mind at ease if that's, really how they're stuck kind of thinking.
There are a lot of different therapists out there. So part of it is, using the resources that are out there, the internet, talking to your friends, looking at Psychology Today or whatever. There are different kinds of therapists. So what I mean by that is, I'm very solution focused. I am cognitive behavioral therapy trained. I'm Gottman trained. So I do a lot of stuff that's very like it comes across as psychoeducation. You know, I'm teaching skills. I'm talking through how you're thinking and how that thinking is affecting your feelings, and then your feelings are affecting your behavior, those kind of things. And then like, oh, you want to work on your anxiety. Here's some skills you can try. Let's keep going until we find one that helps you with your anxiety. So I'm very like, you know, if someone wants like, they want a solution, they've got this one problem that they want to work on, I'm a great therapist for that, because that's really a lot of the way I focus when I'm working with individuals. Rick's a narrative therapist, and I'll let him talk a little bit about narrative and EFT and some of the other ones. You can talk a little bit about how you approach therapy.
I'm a story-driven guy. My story of, you know, right how I started, knowing that I was limited, knowing that there might be a day when I wasn't going to live, or it might be a day when I could never walk again. My story has mattered in that there are so many things that have been available to me, so many ways that I've been inspired to lift myself up off the ground and walk, to take up my mat and get going. And so that's what I carry in the counseling room. So people who are sort of wondering what they can do, who are kind of scared of coming in with me, with Monique and I, you're going to get this very solution-oriented person, very much an attitude, action girl, with this very story-driven person who says, you know what, you're not the problem. The problem is the problem. What kind of story, what kind of problem-saturated story have you been telling about this problem? You've been wearing this problem like a warm coat. You've been sort of grafting this problem into your skin, pretending that it's you, or you've been making this problem your best buddy. Is this problem truly your best buddy, or this imposter that's faking best buddyism? And we start to tell stories. We create a narrative for the place you're at right now. And I love that idea. We begin to, scaffold, build upon each storyline, and eventually develop a plot line that helps you move forward in the best kind of way.
What are some kind of examples that pop into mind off the bat for what are some of those stories or problems that
I am the problem?
See? Just that.
I am the problem is probably the biggest story. Well, it must be me. Everything is around me is falling apart. No one is in my life anymore, so it must be me. Well, that doesn't necessarily have to be the truth. Sometimes the problems around you are just because for a period of time you were surrounded by people that weren't good for you. Or maybe there was a health issue, or maybe there was a time when you weren't sleeping very well, so you were starting to make mental mistakes. So the problem is sleep. That still doesn't make you the problem. Even when it feels like I'm the problem, I can't sleep. That is not necessarily true. We've gone away. We want to move people away from that label. Like a good example is he's bipolar. He's schizophrenic. Well, no, he's narcissistic. No, he's Rick. And he might have trouble with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is the problem. Bipolar is the problem. Depression or anxiety is the problem. You don't shake somebody's hand and say, "Hi, my name is anxiety." No, you say, "My name is Rick," or "My name is Monique. I have anxiety." Well, okay, I know you have anxiety. Let's externalize it, take a look at it, and let's find a story. Let's work this out.
Or find a solution.
Find a solution. She'll find the solution.
Ways to get to the solution.
There are many ways to get to that anxiety, but we both externalize, which is interesting. Both are looking at a problem or looking at a story and having a look at it, doing a storyboard about it, or doing a solutions list about it. Those kinds of things matter. And so that's...
And there are other therapists out there that are very, that they do just want you to just talk. And there are, some people, that's what they need. Like I've had clients where they're talking and I'm like, well, we were going to go in this direction you'd said last session, but you seem like you really need to talk today. Is that what you need today? Yeah, that's what I need today. Okay, well, we'll go there, right? If you need to just, spew or vent or talk through something. So, it really depends on what the person is looking for, right? So you look for a therapist that is going to be helping you with what you feel like you're struggling with. Now, some therapists will list that they work with all the things. If you really are struggling with depression, you might want to look for a therapist that says, I work primarily with people with depression or, self-harm or something like that. Because it's not that I couldn't work with depression, but I would say I specialize more with anxiety. Rick's my depression guy. He does really well with clients that are struggling with depression. And I do really well with anxiety because depression needs to be able to rewrite their story. Anxiety wants solution.
Yeah.
So we can divide and conquer. Now, it's also great in the therapy room for couples therapy because sometimes
we have both in the room.
We have both in the room. We have one part of the couple that really wants, let's find a solution. And we've got another person in the couple's like, hold on, I want to talk about my feelings. We can meet both of those needs with the two different personalities of us as well and our two different approaches to therapy.
Yeah.
So that's where the co-therapy is another extra benefit.
A really good specific example of how, the co-therapy model can be very powerful. And I know that's somewhat your guys' mission to keep spreading the word of that and explain how you've
co-therapies out there
succeeded with it.
We have depression and anxiety in the same room sometimes. We have, we have these kinds of things that I might be better at and she might be better at. And with the package of us two, all of a sudden this couple has the best chance that they possibly could have to be heard, understood, and respected for what is happening to them. We do concentrate on who they are as well. We use a personality system called the Enneagram to discover what the functions of our personality is. Who are we? The tendencies that we have, the weaknesses and strengths that are part of our personality. We do a lot of that too. So we identify who we are, but we also identify who we aren't and what we aren't. And that goes between the both of us. We relate to each other in specific ways, catering to each other's personality. We demonstrate that in the room as well. And so there are just so many different ways that our relationship, our co-therapy system has created benefit for our clients.
Awesome. One more thing that I wanted to touch on, especially in the relationship atmosphere, is how modern technology, how you guys have seen it affect, relationships in a dating, romantic sense. I know for me, I'm 26, so by the time I was in middle school, getting of that age where you start noticing girls and boys, that we already had cell phones, so we were kind of right at that cusp of just technology accelerating. I know you've probably had more time to view how things have changed. So I'm just curious from a therapist perspective, especially specializing in relationships, how you've seen technology affect relationships in, I guess, could be good and bad ways. It's definitely a powerful tool, but power can go either way.
When we started 30 years ago, we could barely email each other. We had rates that went down, phone minute rates that went down after 9 o'clock. So we would talk to each other
Wednesdays.
one day a week at 9 o'clock when we could get our cheapest rates. So technology meant something way different to us than it does to every other couple now.
I would say that's definitely one of the boundaries we often end up talking about with couples is that one or more of them feel that they're on their phones more than they
the mistress be. Or the mister is your phone
or your Xbox or like gaming
iPad
video games. We hear a lot of people say it's not, it used to be, I would say even 20 years ago, there's a TV in the room and you shouldn't have a TV in the room. Now it's, you have your phone in the room. So you go to bed and you don't talk because you're playing your game on your phone and they're playing their game on their phone and nobody's actually talking about the day. Whereas in the old days, they would, snuggle down maybe and talk about what happened during the day or what tomorrow looked like. Whereas now we're in our own little worlds. So I would say that that's definitely something that's come into play as a negative thing in relationships is that we're often quicker to use our phones than we are to sit down and talk. But we know that that's a resource too. So we have things that we tell people, hey, you can, there's an app you can download from the Gottman. Here's another freebie for you guys out there. There's an app.
We love free things.
Yes. There's an app called the Gottman Card Deck. And in it,
How do you spell that?
Gottman.
Okay.
Card Deck. And when you download it, it'll be a square with 2 hearts in it. And in it is, there's various different decks of cards, and it's all electronic, of course, where you can do things. One is called like love maps, and it's like, how well do you know your partner? It's a way to learn, and the way we utilize it is you read the question like, who's your partner's best friend? So then I would try and say who I think Rick's best friend is and explain why I think that person is his best friend, and then let him confirm or deny, or or change it or alter it or add to it, and then switch. And then he could say, well, I think your best friend is, so things like that. But it's a way to get talking. It's really great for couples that maybe have kind of started drifting apart and feel like they don't know each other and they want to reconnect. It's something you can pull out. So there are definitely resources like that on the internet where you can find ways to talk. There are apps out there to help you have healthier dates. There are ways to look up restaurants you want to go to.
There's an app for everything.
There's an app for everything.
True.
So there are definitely resources out there, but it is definitely can be a hindrance if your device or devices become more important than your partner. So being able to put it away. We have some couples where like you need a half an hour to decompress, and then you should go plug your phone on the charger and leave it there until the kids are in bed, and then you can pull it back out again for an hour. Where they come up with those kind of boundaries because they feel like otherwise we're just both on our phones all the time and we don't talk.
Way back in the day, people used to meet at church or meet at a bar or sort of run into somebody and just naturally fall in love with them at the grocery store or something like this.
Hallmark movie.
Where do people meet now?
Online apps.
Match. And we used to hear Match.com. Now it's so much the vernacular that these range of dating services out there, Go Fish, just name them. Now they're just saying the word. Yep, we met on Match. And everyone knows exactly what that is. What a huge difference. We're having to learn how to relate to each other. And it's a very real relational space online. People who are using Xbox to play games with their friends online, they're not interacting with them like you and I are face-to-face right now. But it's a very real relationship. It's online. They're not seeing each other. They can't touch each other, but it's a relationship. So the way we've had to and now we, of course,
do online therapy.
Online therapy through different services, right? So we are now used to being able to relate without having to touch the other, without even sometimes knowing what your facial expression is like. That's something that counselors are learning every day now how to navigate. It's a space we're still not quite used to interacting in because those changes are happening so fast that it's, we're having to always stay up on what's happening, who's relating to who on what, and why, and learn what that relationship space is all about so that we can bring that into a counseling space adeptly. So technology has mattered to relationships in good and unhealthy ways.
And, like sometimes the boundary needs to be you don't fight through text message. Sometimes that has to be a
text-
Don't
boundary.
ever
is-
fight on text.
Oh my goodness!
You're
But
just completely leaving it up to interpretation.
Oh,
what
my
your
word.
actual tone is.
or putting the wrong emoji. Here's a funny story
That's
for
our head
you.
shaker.
My mom won't ever listen to this podcast, so I don't have to worry about exploiting her. But so my mom sent a happy birthday message. My daughter and I share the same date to my daughter with a poop emoji, and then sent it to me because she thought it was a chocolate kiss.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, so, that's a misinterpretation of the emoji. And she thought LOL meant lots of love and not laugh out
Classic.
loud. So we have to be careful about using technology to communicate because you
Happy
miss
birthday, you pile of LOL.
lots of love.
Lots of love.
So yeah, that was a fun conversation
Lovely
I had with my
message.
mother. I'm like, Mom, do you know what that emoji is? She goes, yes. I go, well, what is it? Yeah.
But
Anyway.
I'm sending her a piece of chocolate.
Or if you're like me, I'm very much a engineer, even the way I communicate. So on text, I can be just like extremely
Dry.
direct,
Very direct and
it's-
structured.
I don't know. I'm sure people in the past have been like, "Oh, is he mad at me?" Or it's like, no, I'm just overly efficient with typing. I
Mincing my
guess.
words, whatever, yeah. And when Rick and I first started, we had to do the A, B, C, push the same button multiple times to type the word. So we have a unique thing that we say to each other. We say Mulu, M-U-L-U, which stands for Miss You, Love You. Something that we started back when we had
I
to
remember
text
seeing
if it
that
was
on
too
your
long.
website. I wondered how.
Yeah, that's what it
that's
stands
fun
for. It
kinda
started out, we
background.
used to say miss you, love you.
Okay.
Then we would say miss you with the U and love you with the U. And then when texting came out, we had to do the ABC and whatever to do it. MULU was a lot faster to type. So we would just do that to be able to let the other person know we were thinking of them.
Now it's just a word. It's like match.
For us, it's
Between
just a word.
us, it's just a word. Mulu tells the other that we're thinking about you, that we love you, and that we can't wait to see you. So it means miss you, love you, but it means so much more. So we want to help other couples, other people, with their friends, with their families, with their partners, learn how to say miss you, love you.
Awesome. I feel like that's a pretty just positive note to end on. Maybe any last words just to promote, going to therapy and getting help on that mental health side. Any just last words of encouragement for people on that?
If you're feeling like you need another set of ears to help you make a good decision, or to help you through a tough spot, or to move you to a goal that you're trying to reach, that's a good reason to go to therapy, whether it's as a couple or an individual. If your friends are telling you need therapy, then it's probably something you should look into. If you think you need therapy and you don't know who to turn to, ask a friend. But there are so many resources out there that can help you, that people want to help you. Don't wait till you're in crisis. That's always harder. We much rather help you work through something before it becomes so overwhelming that you can't function. So if you're starting to feel like you're struggling, then that's a good time to look into a therapist.
And I do want to add something. We've heard so much about, I notice my friend's in trouble, or my mom's in trouble, or this couple's in trouble, but I don't want to butt in. If you butting in, or if you talking to them and saying, hey, counseling might be a good idea, if you were part and parcel in how that relationship was saved, wouldn't you rather just say, hey, counseling might be a good idea? Wouldn't you rather have been able to relate to another person and say, look, I'm noticing something. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not trying to get involved. I just think counseling might be a good idea. Because in every kind of thing, whether you want to build a house or do something else, you go to an expert and say, hey, I need some help with this. It's the same with counseling. And we can help each other do that. It's okay. It's good to notice things about another person and then encourage good things for that other person. We would want us to say, to be encouraged in other ways. Counseling is just one of those ways. And we love it when people start thinking in terms of confidence to other people, saying, look, counseling is a good idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate the time today. I'll give you a little red carpet moment for Real Connections. Where can people find you if they, you're in the greater Des Moines area primarily. How can people get in touch with you?
We are located at 2540 106th Street, which is over north of Hickman, right by CarMax. There's an office area back behind there on 106th Street. We're back there. But you can get a hold of us at www.realconnectionscounseling.com. You can call us at 515-635-1805. or you can email us at info@realconnectionscounseling.com. But we're actually pretty high on the Google list right now, too. So if you just type co-therapy or couples counseling Des Moines, you'll probably see us on the first page, which is awesome. So that's another way to get a hold of us. If you can't figure out how to spell any of those words, or you just are struggling, that's a good way to get in touch with us. But we would love to have a conversation with you. Usually we set up a consult with our admin. We'll give them a call and talk through what they're needing, and then set them up with which co-therapy team would be the best team for them, or if they want individual counseling. So
We are Iowa's co-therapy company, and we're excited that we get to be in that position, and we're excited when other people come to us. And what we can guarantee you is that no matter which team you get, it's going to be a team who enjoys each other. It's going to be a team who loves our clients. It's going to be a team who relates to each other and brings our expertise into the room in the most loving way possible. And that I can promise you.
we're not your typical
We
therapists.
are not your typical therapists.
And because we're not your typical therapist, you're going to get an amazing experience.
Oh, and remember the 80-minute session? The 80-minute session is our standard, not the 50. We found that a lot of couples, especially, kind of hit their stride at 30 minutes, where they start talking about important things, and then they get 15 minutes to talk and work something hard out. Whereas you can hit your stride at 30 minutes, and we have a long time to work something out. So that 80 minutes helps clients get through therapy faster. And we get to talk about a lot more during a session, and that has made a huge difference.
And let me just say this, for people that don't know, you can also do co-therapy for individual counseling. If you want two different perspectives, we've gotten some clients that have come in and had seen both of us and as an individual. We've also we can offer individual therapy. We can also have an individual therapist work with a couple. We just know the benefits of doing the co-therapy piece, and that's important. You can do 80 minutes as an individual as well if you'd like, but we do offer 50-minute standard sessions for individuals. So I just wanted to throw that out there, so it's not that we only do the 80 minutes, but we do encourage that for our couples therapy because of that 30-minute mark that Rick's talking about, where they don't get to actually follow through and get through the whole issue and get to resolution before they leave if we do a 50-minute session, but they can if we do 80. And that's been a game changer for a lot of our couples.
Awesome. Well, I enjoyed the conversation. Again, appreciate
Same.
the time. I think we got a lot of good information out there, which is my goal. Hopefully get people a little more open to the idea of therapy, especially on the couple side.
And that will wrap it up for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I really enjoyed getting to dive into a discussion about relationships with a kind of new perspective for me, talking to people that help people with their relationships on the daily. I think this is a very powerful subject and one that can easily be taken for granted. So I hope you gain something from this conversation. Hopefully you're able to take some good notes and maybe think of some ways you can apply that to your life, or just be ready, say if you're not in a relationship like myself at the moment, take some of that information and store it away so you're more prepared to have a quality relationship and maintain it as you go. This was a cool experience for me, getting another subject matter on the podcast, and I look forward to trying to find more opportunities to do so. Feel free to reach out if you have any comments, ideas, topics that you'd want to maybe have experts speak on. You can find me at Shady Engineering on YouTube and Instagram. As always, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing the next episode.